I was making no money. I'd copied the way that other businesses price their services, and I was doing nothing. But then I did one change and started charging 41 times more than I did before. And I want to make sure that you have the formula for doing it. So watch this interview where I go through exactly the steps that I went through in order to charge 41 times more. And that was a lot better. So when I started my marketing agency, so I had a background. I'm a former lawyer, and I was the lawyer for Facebook and Yahoo and a bunch of internet advertising businesses. And so I knew internet advertising, and I knew the law, and I'm technically oriented. And I looked at the legal space because I used to own a law firm, and I said, these are the worst marketers that I've ever seen. I'm going to help them market, and I know how to do internet advertising. This sounds like a good match. But I didn't really know the agency space. So I looked around and I found an agency that was really doing extremely well in a similar business. So in this case, they were doing marketing for dentists. So lawyers, there are many different kinds of lawyers. There are local lawyers, and then there are national lawyers, et cetera. But these guys were doing for dentists. And they're doing search marketing for dentists, local businesses, and they had a certain price point at $599, and they would do this essentially productized service for it. And I watched this little business and their history, and in 2 years they're making over $1 million doing this, and they were just scaling like crazy. This was in the early days of Facebook ads when you could get customers really easily on Facebook. So I think, well, I'll do the same thing, right? Essentially, I can look at what they're doing, I can look at their price point, I can look at how they're advertising, and their founder, their CEO, was very generous online with showing how he was doing it. He was kind of sharing, like, he was doing webinars like, hey, here's what I'm doing, and all in promoting what he's doing. So I watched all of his stuff. I reverse engineered exactly how they're doing it, what they're offering, and how they're doing it. And I figured I'd just imitate the same thing. And I did that. And 6 months later, I'd spent a bunch on advertising. I'd set up a whole bunch of operations in order to deliver the kind of search marketing that they were doing. And I had 6 clients at $590 a month, and a big infrastructure, and all the advertising. And it was absolutely stupid. So then at that point, I was like, well, something has to change. And so it took me a bunch of thinking, but then I was like, okay, well, I really need to be scientific about this. So I had a hypothesis that pricing mattered. And we all know pricing matters, but I thought that for this thing, if I raise the price, well, now it's going to be too high, right? Because this other industry there, it's $599. If I raise my price, it's going to scare everybody away. But it turned out, I tested it. My hypothesis was if I increased the price to this, then I will get this many customers. But even if I have fewer customers, it'll still work out. Did the test, increased my pricing, and I actually got more customers. So then I increased the price again. So I went from $599, and then I went to $1,800, then to $2,500. Now at $2,500, I'm like, wait, I'm actually getting more customers for pretty much the same thing. I mean, I had to work a little bit on the offer and expand the delivery, but the margins were much better. I'm like, okay, well, now I'm at $2,500 a month for a client. What happens if I double it? What happens if I go to 5,000? So that's what I did. So I went to 5,000, and that worked. And so I was like, okay, 5,000 is working. Well, now I need to go back and run some experiments on the delivery side of things, because now I'm able to charge more, but I have to make sure that they're not going to churn out. They're not going to leave because I'm charging so much more, and they're not going to see the value. So I went back and did some experiments on how do I deliver this thing. But to shortcut the story, I went to 7,500, 15,000, 20,000 a month, just doing this iterative testing of test a price, test the method of delivery, test the offer, go back again. And this kind of testing essentially let me raise my prices like 41x what I was originally charging. By the time I sold the agency, our big clients were at 20 grand a month. Before that, I ran a law firm, and in those kind of businesses, it is harder to do this. Now, we did do it on a limited basis, which was probably part of the inspiration. So in a law firm, very often you'll see a law firm, and they just charging hourly, right? So we, in our law firm, we started out charging hourly. And then I had this idea. It's like, well, what if we didn't charge hourly? What if we charge like cell phone companies? What if we put everyone on a subscription? So we did a rollout of what if we build you on subscription as a law firm? So you paid the same amount every single month. And so we were working with companies, and their bills would be spiky. right? So it might be 1 month they had $500 bill, and the next month they had 4,000, and then they have 2,000. It would just go up and down like that. So it said, what if we picked a number and then said every month is this amount, and then we'll have a certain scope of service, and then we'll do that. Pretty much unheard of in the legal space. So we were actually written up in a bunch of legal publications of doing this. And the interesting thing about that is that fundamentally changed the business. We did run that experiment. I guess I didn't articulate it in the same way that I was able to with the agency as I was coming to it. But once we were able to do that, the same thing kind of happened, which was we were able to stair-step our engagements up from these clients that were, corporate clients averaging $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And then we stepped up until we were taking folks at $11,000 to $19,000 a month as a retainer. So that's a pretty big difference, but it's all because we experimented at the beginning. And I didn't think of it in that way. And it was just kind of like hey, why don't we try this? And it wasn't as disciplined, but that was one of the earlier businesses where I had a similar experience. If you want to increase your pricing and your profits, you can use the same process that I used of scientific entrepreneurship. And you could find more about that in this video. That will be the key to unlocking wherever you're stuck in price and profit.